Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar, and today let's talk about the concept of a hero versus that of a victim. This is something that I will talk with some clients about, especially when we find ourselves in that victim mentality. And chiefly, the main difference that I see between someone who is a victim and someone who is a hero in their own story is a victim is one who typically just allows things to happen and then complains about it. Now, this isn't to say that complaining is inherently a bad thing. We need to have those good and safe places to be able to say whatever it is that needs to be said. However, there is this tendency to complain, to grouse, to bitch and moan, to just express what is bothering us, what we don't like about the world, about the situation, about what it is that we're experiencing, and then not do anything about it. This is an example of being the victim in your story. If you think about the great stories and adventures, or even the fantasies that we enjoy, that we read about, that we watch, one of the things that I'm going to use a movie as an example here is in movies, we're following a hero, a group of heroes, an anti-hero, and there are all sorts of other people that we would technically just consider the extras. The people in the background, the people who are just a part of the environment. Many of the people that I speak to who fall into this victim mentality are individuals that are in the background of their story. They are extras. The world is happening to them. They're not really doing much to contribute to the story themselves. But if you take a look at the hero in these stories, they are doing something. They are interacting. They are preventing. They're fighting. They're striving. And that is, to me, the key difference between being the hero of your story and being the victim in your own story. Coming from someone who still falls into the victim mentality, it's very, very easy to stay in this negative mindset that there's no point in striving, there's no point in trying, there is no benefit to trying to become something different. Life has beat me down. Life has beat you down. There are a lot of messages and beliefs that are keeping us stuck where we feel comfortable. Life is keeping us stuck where it's normal. For us to become heroes of our stories, it requires us to eliminate this negative mentality and belief that we are helpless to influence the plot of our own narratives. This is something that is very challenging because for a lot of us, we weren't shown or taught how it is to be a hero in our story. In fact, a lot of times, we were encouraged to be the victim. Let's just pretend, and maybe this isn't something that's pretend for you, that you were more assertive growing up, much more independent, much more free-spirited, much more sure of who you are, what you wanted to do, and in your efforts to express yourself, you were told that maybe you were being too loud. Maybe you weren't expressing the identity that everyone else believed or thought that you should be. This is something that's actually very common with women. Women who are assertive are often qualified as being aggressive because they are expressing something that is a lot of times considered more of a masculine trait. So if the expectation is that you are supposed to be docile, you're supposed to be soft spoken, you're supposed to, I don't know, just stay within the shadows of powerful men in your life, and you are a woman and you grew up as a young lady and this is what you experienced, then you were taught to be the victim in your story. You couldn't be who you really are. You couldn't be assertive. You couldn't be sure of yourself because that's not what society or the people around you were encouraging you to be. If it's, let's look at the other end of the coin here. Let's say that, well, don't need to go with the let's say. This is something that I often struggle with a lot, and that has been my masculinity. As a man who grew up in a very conservative area of southeastern Washington state, it was very commonplace for what I would consider today to be messages of toxic masculinity or hyper masculinity for someone like me who is much more empathetic, who's not really out to compete with anyone, who is like, hey, let's just have fun, let's just get along. It was very difficult for someone like me to grow up in an area like southeastern Washington where there is a big emphasis of sports and cowboys and ranching, and you come home after a hard day's work and enjoy your beer or your whiskey, and that wasn't the kind of person that I wanted to be. I've likely said in previous episodes how I'm just not that big of a fan of sports. And in middle school, I was forced to play sports every single quarter, I guess trimester technically, because my parents didn't want me coming home and playing video games with my free time. They wanted me to be much more active. And if you take a look at me in public and you see the size of a person that I am, it makes sense why my parents would want me to do that. And yet, I hated playing these competitive sports. I did not like playing football. In fact, I despise playing football, and I still despise football to this day. I've just never understood the value that comes from people trying to kill each other in order to move a piece of leather from one end of the field to another. I do not understand that kind of hyper masculine energy. Around here also, and in fact this was a big thing when I was in school, has been an association with cars and the kind of car that you drive or that you admire, that you want to have, is in some ways a defining quality of the kind of man that you are, which I've never understood. In fact, since the pandemic, it has been more and more common around here that there are people that will start racing. And I cannot tell you how frequently I end up hearing cars that are driving really fast late at night, revving their engines. You have these individuals that are just essentially going for that adrenaline rush that comes from the power of having such a big muscle car or sports car or whatever. And I couldn't care less. I really still do not care less about what kind of vehicle I drive. I'm not someone who cares about the power of a vehicle. I just want something that's going to get me from A to B and not have any problems along the way. That's really what qualifies as a car for me. It wasn't until I was in my 30s really that I started like actually paying attention to like makes and models, just because I I knew less about makes and models than my partner Libby did, and she still knows more about it than I do. And I guess to a certain degree, it's to help me be able to identify vehicles better in case there is an accident or something like that. But I really don't care about the vehicle. I don't care about what's under the hood. I don't care about how fast it can go from zero to something. It means nothing to me. And so in a lot of ways, I was ostracized for being myself. And I still very often and can very quickly return to this victim mentality that nothing is going to change, that I'm just not going to be accepted, that people aren't going to care about what I think and what I feel and my perspective on various topics or issues. And I remain quiet. I remain quiet. I remain in the background, like an extra on the set of a TV show or a movie. In order to be the hero of my own story, I need to not be quiet. I need to be comfortable with who I am. I need to recognize that there are things I can do to impact the plot of my own story in this crazy adventure that we call life. I have initiative. I have power. There are things within my sphere of influence and things that I can control that I can and rightfully should make an impression upon. And yet, I often look at the things that I can't control, things that I don't have authority or power over, and then I fall back into the same old troubling mindset that there's no point in even trying. No one cares. And I just fade into the background and am quiet, restrained, apathetic. Those aren't good things. Those are not good things to have in a hero. Those are not the kind of stories that we want to engage with. Those are not the stories that inspire. And, wow, that's actually something that just came to my mind here. One of the things that is so different about a hero and a victim is heroes are those whose stories inspire others to their own greatness. When was the last time that you watched a show or played a video game or read a book or even just heard a story from someone else and they were just talking about some humdrum, mundane, status quo kind of activity that they were going through or someone else was going through, and you felt truly inspired by the end of the story? Honestly, I'm getting bored just trying to come up with this example here. It is the people who experience adversity and overcome, possibly even thrive, that are those who inspire us to be greater individuals. So a big question really is, who's inspiring your story? Who are you looking to for inspiration in order to become the kind of person that you ultimately want to be? And this is a challenge. For a lot of us, it is going to require actually becoming aware of these thoughts and these feelings that you have about yourself, about your situation, and about the people who are influencing your story. I would not be the kind of person that I am today if it wasn't for my partner, Libby. I wouldn't be the kind of person that I am today if it wasn't for my friends, Ben and Brandon and Katie and Dan and John. The people that I interact with on a very regular basis. I see them in person. These are the people that I know if I'm experiencing some kind of struggle, I can reach out and they're going to be there for me. These are the people who have made me more of a priority in their lives and them a priority in my life. And I am a much better person because of it. These are the people that if I complain about something, if I'm getting into that victim mindset, they will hold the space for me and say, man, that's really rough, and yet not leave it there and encourage me and ask questions to help me figure out what can I do about it. Much like what I do with my clients. I ask questions in order to get them thinking about what can you do to change what you actually have influence over. How can you find a more fulfilling job? How can you have better communication with your friends, with your family, with your romantic partner? How can you stand up to your overbearing boss? How can you find your voice and be respectful in how you use it? For me personally, the adventures and the stories that I absolutely enjoy experiencing are those that don't have just one hero. They don't have just one person who is trying to solve a problem. It tends to be individuals working with others in order to overcome some dramatic evil or some overwhelming power, or even just some harebrained or maybe even well-intentioned antagonist. To become the hero of your story, if we even just take a look at the hero's journey, does require a mentor, someone who can challenge us, who can encourage us, someone who can teach us how to use the gifts that we've been given, the abilities, the powers, someone who can bring out the best in us, who can call us out on our shit, someone who can tell us when we are stuck in our old mindsets or when we're starting to slip back into them. Again, this is hard because it's so easy to go back to what has been normal for us for so long. And for that, it can be very helpful to have others who can call us out to be the heroes of our stories, who can challenge us, who can encourage us, who can affirm us. It's not just having good people in your corner. It's not just becoming mindful of these thoughts and these beliefs. It is intentionally working against what is this old programming inside of us. If we start slipping back into our old coping mechanisms, there's a reason why. If we start slipping back into the old mindsets and behavioral patterns that are telling us just be quiet or go back to what has been comfortable, what we know, there is a reason for it. And instead of just letting it happen, find the reason. Figure out what it is that is causing this old pattern to return to your life and start to challenge it. For many of us, this is going to go back into your own story. It's oftentimes been what's necessary for me is to go back into my story and figure out what it is that I was told, what I was taught, what has been instilled within me in order to bring me to where I am today in that moment. I can't tell you how many times I have heard people express the sentiment of, why bother going into the past? The past is in the past. I just want to focus on the present and the future. The problem is, for most of us, our past is having an incredible influence on our present. It is directing our steps, it's directing our behaviors, it's directing our motives. So getting into your past is going to be an important thing to do. In fact, for a lot of the people that I work with who have some kind of maladaptive coping mechanism that they turn to in order to just cope with and even survive these experiences in their present life, these are coping mechanisms that they developed way in their past. When they experience whatever is causing these hardships in their lives, their brain and their body is telling them, we're going through the same thing that's happened in our past. You can't run away from your past. You can't avoid it. You can't run from it. Your past has brought you to where you are today. That is an important thing for us to recognize. To become heroes of our stories means that we must overcome our pasts. We must overcome what has brought us to the victim state that we're in. We begin to have more of an influence on the narrative of our own lives. That's what I want to encourage you to do. We need more heroes. It's not the first time I've said that. We have many, many people who are walking around and they are just victims. They're extras in the background of someone else's story. And we need more people to stand up and be that good role model and that good influence of what it is to be a hero. I hope that you found this conversation inspiring. I hope that this is something that does help you in becoming the hero of your own story. If you would like help in becoming the hero of your own story, then take a look at the links in the description where we can set up a call to just figure out if we're going to be a good fit. And I would be happy to help you, mentor you, and be that guide to becoming the hero of your own story. If you like what you're hearing, then please give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads. And until next time, live strong for today.